of you have been in an elevator or an Uber with someone and you start talking about the weather? Why do you talk about the weather? Because everyone can relate to it and it affects everyone, right? Which is why this conversation with Sheri Bachstein is so essential, because predictive analytics are really affecting how we integrate the weather. So Sheri leads the consumer division for the weather company in IBM Business. In this role, she oversees all aspects of the Weather Channel and Weather Underground consumer properties, including product management and design, content development, and global expansion across the organizations on Weather's owned and operated properties. Sheri, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Hi, thanks.
Why don't we start out with talking about how the weather company accesses and calibrates and really integrates that data to give it to us all.
Yeah, so as Jackie said, weather impacts every person, every business, and what we're really doing is taking billions of data sources and leveraging machine learning and AI to come up with what is a precise forecast. We do that for every location on the planet, so 2.2 billion locations that are updated then every 15 minutes to give an accurate forecast. And so we are constantly always looking for ways to improve that forecast, especially in regions of the world where accessing that data can be really challenging. Our weather models use about 162 different models. So they're models that may come from the government, from private sectors, from other businesses, and then they're proprietary models that our meteorologists create themselves. And so getting that data from certain regions of the world, emerging markets, India, Indonesia, Africa, can be really challenging. But we're always looking for ways to improve that, to bring forecasts to those parts of the world.
How does the formula work exactly? What are you collecting currently, in the past, and how do you create that future predictive analytic?
So we use a lot of future predictive analytics, especially within different businesses. We really provide that to a lot of different industries. I'll give you an example around aviation. So we power the weather for about 80% of the top airlines in the world. And what we do is we provide them with data science, with historical weather data. We mix it with their flight data, with their airport data, in order to help them improve the operational efficiencies at the airports. So we give them a way to predict when some of these occurrences are going to happen around congestion on the runways, airport delays as far as arrivals or departures. So this helps them to be more efficient. So it's that combination of the historical weather, what happened in those times related to that data, and pulling that all together. We go far beyond the forecast now at the weather company, and we're really about a decision-making platform, giving companies and consumers insights so they can better plan. In the case of business, it's around efficiencies, it's around profitability. So those things are really important. Also, as far as aviation, it's not just on the ground, it's in the air as well. We have thousands of sensors on these aircrafts, and predicting turbulence. I'm sure most of you that travel have been in turbulence before. It's not fun. And so for airline passengers and for those companies, it's really important they keep the passengers comfortable on those flights. So we've come up with a way to predict clear air turbulence, which is really hard to predict, but it gives pilots and air traffic control the ability to say, fly lower, fly higher, or fly around. And that's really important because injuries related to turbulence cost the airlines millions of dollars. So we've been able to reduce that cost by about 25% by doing these predictive analytics as it relates to aviation.
Let's talk about that cost a little bit, because definitely predictive analytics can affect the bottom line. What are some other industries that benefit from that knowledge?
Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's an industry that wouldn't benefit from it. We're working in verticals around agriculture, finance, energy, certainly retail. Retail is one of the areas that probably those correlations between analytics is really underutilized to help the retail sector. But I can kind of give you an example. If you think of this jacket, it's made of cotton, and so you have the cotton farmer who's growing the cotton using our weather data to see when's the best time to irrigate, when's the best time to fertilize, and a lot of these harvesting optimizations that he can make. The cotton's picked, It's put on a truck. That truck has to know what the weather patterns are going to be on the route. Do they need to avoid dense fog? Do they need to skirt around thunderstorms? The trucking industry spends about $3.5 billion in cost associated to weather, which means that they are delayed in getting their shipments to the right place at the right time. So it costs them a lot of money. So the cotton's delivered to the factory. Factories depend on energy to keep running. So a factory that creates products like this in the middle of Oklahoma, weather can be really severe, and it can be really, really hot. So utility companies are using our predictive analytics around weather to say, you know, what is that precise load of energy and demand needed to keep that factory running, because that factory needs to keep running to create this jacket. Jackets packaged up, sent to the retailer, and that's where most of you actually, you know, see that. The retailer knows when to put it on display, what's the seasonality in that region of when a cotton jacket might be better than a wool jacket, and then as a consumer, we buy it. So there's just one example of a life cycle of where we've empowered every single one of these industries through predictive analytics to make the right decision to deliver their products or their service on time.
I hope everyone just took note of how long it takes and how much
To get
technology to get dressed in the morning
Yes,
really takes
yes,
everyone.
yes.
So how does the partnership work with these companies? Do they come to you, and how do you process their data?
Mm-hmm. So yes, we have a lot of partnerships with all these industries. What's important about the weather company and IBM as a whole is our partners' data is their data. It's really important as we continue to evolve in AI and working with AI companies and machine learning, you know, because some people feel that data, it's almost a new currency. Data has a lot of value. Some want to distribute it and then sell it, and that will turn data into a commodity. I'm very familiar with commodity because weather in itself, as far as currents and forecasts, is a commodity, and I'm dealing with that in my own industry. But data, you know, Jenny Rometty, our CEO, likes to say that data is actually the new natural resource. And I think that's true. So we take our weather data, our years of weather data, historical data, we mix it with our customers' data, depending on what industry they are, to deliver insights. So data is great, but you can just wind up with a sea of data if you don't know what to do with it, if you don't have the data science, and to depict which of these insights are then going to solve the problems for the customer. So what problems are customers facing? And so that's kind of how we do that. A really interesting example, you know, obviously with retail, when it rains, people buy umbrellas. You know, it's obvious, right? And I like when that happens. But, you know, what's some things that may be not so obvious as we look at some retailers and consumer packaged goods is, you know, right before a hurricane, strawberry Pop-Tarts fly off the shelves at the grocery stores. For some reason, I guess it's a comfort food. You know, juice.
Last forever.
Yes, they last forever. You don't have to have electricity to eat them, really. Juice sells really well when winds are really high, but temperatures are really low. Soda does well. It's probably flying off the shelves in the Northeast because it's been one nor'easter after another. But soda sells really well in the winter when it's snowy and when it's raining. And there's lots of these examples that we've been actually partnering with a lot of companies to help so they can better be prepared. You know, they have inventory in stock as it relates to a grocery store, consumer packaged goods. So just a lot of different ways we're helping that may not seem as obvious.
You mentioned that every industry is incorporating weather into their predictions or their bottom line. What are some emerging industries that you're working with to almost predict for them and integrate your technology before they come to market?
Mm-hmm. So we're doing a lot of work with IoT. Weather Company, we are part of the Watson IoT platform. Watson Content and Video is all packaged under the Weather Company now. So we're doing a lot of work in the IoT space. And those of you that maybe went to CES or Mobile World Congress, I mean, IoT, AI everywhere, but then so is autonomous cars. And you know, I'm very excited about them personally. Can't wait because I can't stand the traffic in Atlanta. But just some amazing work that we're doing with manufacturers within this particular space. We're coming up with a predictive collision product to help them because it's really important with autonomous cars. that they understand how weather impacts the car, and then how weather impacts the ability for that car to drive. Really the first time that there's an accident that's weather related with autonomous car, the industry is going to take a really big hit, because that's table stakes, right? You have to be able for a car to maneuver around weather, especially just as simple as light rain that can, called hydroplaning. So it's really crucial that we are in the beginning in some of these emerging industries to help them, be successful.
Not just emerging industries, but also other markets, right? The global world. How you produce data for the US is different than what you produce for Japan or India. How do you speak to those global markets versus how you speak to the US?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways with global markets, and some of those areas I spoke about are very tricky because there's a lack of historical weather data, and you need historical data to really do predictive analytics correctly and to get those insights. So there are challenges there for us in some countries. We have countries that we supply weather to that they're still delivering a weather alert on a PDF. From room to room within a government agency, and you're like, let us help you automate that. And so there's just some really archaic weather systems out there. So that part in itself with predictive analytics is really challenging. But there are areas like India where we can go in and make a really big impact in agriculture. Farming is very crucial to that culture. So we can go in and provide those insights. On the consumer side, honestly, we've been really underserving our clients in some of these markets. And I say that because either from a consumer level or a business level, it's really about giving people information so they can make decisions. So really, simple things of what to wear, do I send my kids to soccer practice? And in India, if you opened our app, and I welcome all of you to download the Weather Channel app today, if you don't have it. You open the app and the first thing you see is temperature. And in India, that's meaningless. Actually, in our studies in India, they think weather is temperature, and weather's so much more than that, but that is their perception. And so telling someone in India it's going to be hot or hotter is not useful. There's no use for that. What they really want to know is how that temperature mixes with humidity, with dew point, although most people don't even know what dew point is. But it's how do I feel? How is this weather going to make me feel? Is it sticky? We'd like to create a sweat index, although I don't really like that name for it. But that's what's important. Am I going to sweat? What kind of clothing do I wear? In the monsoon season, us sending them a rain alert, it's just kind of silly, right? What we really need to be doing is serving them an alert that says there's going to be a period where there's no rain, or the monsoon's going to be so heavy that it causes flooding. So as we continue to expand globally, and our data is accessible in 172 countries, 62 languages, we're underserving our users because we haven't gone in now and dug in to solve their particular problems. But that's all changing, and we're refocused on doing that now that we have a good baseline. So that's some of the ways on the consumer side we'll be using some of our AI and machine learning to help in these markets.
So you mentioned the sweat index. What are some predictive analytics that you can use and operate here in the US that would help consumers who are using this data, and then it affects other industries that consumers interact with?
So one of the areas I think about and it excites me, which may not be obvious, is in health. So on our platforms, we provide an allergy forecast, migraine, breathing, and it's based on historical weather data and patterns that we see. But maybe what causes my migraine doesn't cause your migraine, and so it's not personalized enough. So we're actually using the edge computing that some of you may have just heard about, fantastic technology, especially as it relates to health. To look at consumer behaviors by a consumer just telling us that they go to the allergy section and they'll say, today I feel bad, or how do you feel today? Good, bad. Just that simple interaction can provide us insights to help them figure out when weather may be a trigger for their symptoms. So with migraines, a drop in barometric pressure can cause a headache or an onset of a migraine. Stagnant air mixed in with pollen can cause someone with asthma to maybe have a flare-up. So there's all these ways that weather can be a trigger for symptoms. Now, we're not trying to diagnose illness, but what we are trying to do is help predict when these symptoms may be occurring as it relates to weather. So by a user just giving us that simple information, we can say, it's interesting, every time you feel bad, the barometric pressure is at this level. One of those days is coming up on Saturday, so be prepared. And so in our discovery and talking to people, most of them have no idea what they're allergic to or what causes their migraines, and they don't know when they're going to happen. So they're not prepared. They don't have their prescriptions. They don't have their medicine. Most people don't feel bad until they feel bad. And so this is one way we're using the predictive analytics on our platforms to help in some of this space. And IBM as a whole and Watson Health's doing amazing things in the larger health arena, especially around cancer and things like that, which is so inspiring. But the edge computing piece of it is really important because it's happening on the device. So we are not taking any of that personal information, which especially in healthcare is really important. We're not storing it. We're not keeping it. We're doing the algorithms on the device, providing the insights on the device to that particular user, and we're not storing it. So it's edge computing is very valuable in lots of ways, but that's one of them.
So when you're talking about the consumer, it really is important for them to interact with the app in order for you to predict for them when it's going to be a good day or a bad day?
For this particular case, having that interaction would be important. Over time, moving this to off-property is really important. We did that in our media space. So as a consumer product, we are dependent on advertising revenue, and that industry has changed dramatically with the introduction of programmatic advertising. And so it makes it really challenging. So we had to really differentiate ourselves as a publisher in advertising, and we looked to our own data to do that with weather. And these were some of the things I told you about the strawberry Pop-Tarts. We created targeting capabilities that allowed our publishers to better target users on our site. And then when that was successful, we're like, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just give it to them? They can, use it on any digital property that they advertise on, and moving off property. So a lot of these technologies that we're actually building for ourselves, and we'll do that first on the consumer side, then we can package up to give to our customers that then they can use it off property. But we do want to test it. We want to make sure it works. We want to validate that data, before doing that.
How quickly can your technologies adapt? I'm traveling, and so your app already knows that I get allergies in my hyperlocation, Los Angeles. But what if I travel to New York? Does it recognize that I'm there and adjust?
Yep. So our apps, if consumers allow us to collect their location, which is needed to give them a precise forecast, we can give you a forecast, down to your precise location. We can leverage that location data to understand where you are, so we can be more proactive in sending you alerts or information as it's related to your location, the time of day, which is really important. It's a key function of actually delivering accuracy in weather. Accuracy in weather actually starts with having the right location. There's times where I will be in a location and you might be like, well, why is it not raining? But it says it is. Because if you didn't geolocate, then it could be raining 10 miles away because the city center of maybe your zip code is there, and that's the point of which we're giving you that weather data. So the precise location is really important in the accuracy, and then we can provide you whatever services that are related to weather around that.
Does volatility of weather affect the algorithm? So for example, 2017 was a crazy year. We had wildfires, we had mudslides, we had hurricanes, even dipping into 2018. Do the algorithms adjust for that new data collected?
So the anomalies of severe weather do play a role. Sometimes it's data, depending on what problem you're trying to solve. But sometimes it's data that you would just throw out because it's an anomaly. But then sometimes it becomes cyclical. So in 2017, it was an amazing year of severe weather, and it came back to back. Not that any of those occurrences were unusual. Hurricanes in Houston are not unusual. Mudslides, Santa Ana winds, these things happen on a regular cyclical basis. It's just last year they all seemed to happen at once, one right after the other, and they were catastrophic in many areas. And so we look at that data because it's part of history, and you know, at one time you could predict with some kind of assurance that a hurricane would hit Florida every 9 years. That's probably moved up a little bit now, you know, with each storm. So it does play a role in being able to predict that. But you know, predicting severe weather is hard. We just partnered with NCAR, which is the National Center for Atmospheric Research, to come up with what's one of the first thunderstorm prediction models. It's a global model. Thunderstorms are extremely hard to predict because they pop up so quickly, and so you're not able to give people a lot of time to prepare. And you know, that is really our goal, is to prepare people and to keep them safe. So we're very excited to be able to work with this new forecast. The other technology that's newer for us is probabilistic forecast. This is really important to industries. So as consumers, we're going to give you a forecast, and most of other competing weather stations give you what's called a deterministic forecast. So as an example, if it's going to snow, we may say you're going to get 4 inches of snow. So it's that deterministic forecast. We've pinpointed the forecast that has the least amount of error in it, because we want to be right? We don't want to give you accurate data. But when you actually looked at that forecast from a science perspective, there's actually a range of possibilities that could happen. We're giving you that median possibility, the one with the least amount of error. But when you're looking at it from a business, we can give them confidence in this range as well, and provide that data to our businesses that say, okay, we're calling 4 inches of snow, but actually the highest amount could be 0. Like the model is saying it's actually not going to happen at all. The second highest is saying it's going to be 8 inches of snow, right? And so we're calling for 4, least error, but you need to be prepared. And so for governments that need to make sure they have salt on the roads, or for retailers, they need to plan for 8, knowing likely could be 4. And so it's an interesting product to give, and for businesses, extremely valuable. For the consumer, we haven't put it in any of our products just yet, because you know, you sit there and you go, well, great, Weather Channel, 0 to 8. Like, do you have no idea what's going to happen? It makes it seem like that. So finding the right way to share that information with our consumers so that it's helpful to them, that they can make decisions off it, is what our team is actually working with now, something that we'll release in Q2, but it probably based on some kind of a confidence index or something like that.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where we're predicting the weather, you know, 10 years, 15 years out, or we're not there yet?
So we certainly have climatology that predicts way out based on the past and how we see things changing. And so that piece of it certainly exists today. And a lot of that climatology is used in these predictive models as well. But you know, you're still dealing with Mother Nature. So we will get as close as we can get. But certainly the advanced technologies, machine learning and AI has just, it's, you know, we did that prior to becoming IBM, and now we're IBM. We just have this playground of technology at our disposal that I think can do some pretty amazing things to help people.
I think so. I hope everyone goes back now and has that conversation with their Uber driver or their person in the elevator, and has a little bit more of an interesting conversation point. Thank you so much, Sheri.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.